Okay, hello and welcome back. Brett here with clickmill.co. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and in this video, we're going to talk about my favorite. Have you ever been in a call with me? If you've seen our live calls with our interns where we're training and you're watching those trainings that were filmed live, you probably hear about me talk about the 80-20 principle all the time. I'm going to share it with you in this video and show you how to use it. I mean, really to get exponential results in your ministry or your Christian business. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. This is how the 80-20 principle works. Okay. Let's say in your business, you have 10 products or services, or alternatively, in your ministry, you have 10 programs or services. Now, a guy named, I believe, Wilfred, Pareto, who is a mathematician, noticed that his bean plants, 20% of those plants produced 80% of the beans. Now, that sounds very similar to scripture. Again, and yeah, I'm saying this all the time. When it says that some will come up and produce 100, 60, and 30 times what was sown, well, that's what Wilfred was looking. He's like, wait a minute, hold on a second. Why does the bean plant produce way more than those other plants? Two of them produce 80% of the fruit, and the other eight produce 20%. That's weird. Well, he started looking in other areas in business and all these other areas, and he goes, why is it the same everywhere? And then he came up with sort of what he called his 80-20 principle. And what it says is that 20% of your resources, that's the way I'm saying this. You could say effort, but effort's maybe only one resource. It's attention, energy, finances, time. The use of 20% of your resources gets you 80% of your results. So 20% of your products as a Christian business owner gets you 80% of your sales or your income. 20% of your church attendance bring in 80% of your new visitors because they're actually talking. Well, that's interesting. And the other 80% only gets you 20% of the fruit that you're looking for. Now, here's the catch. In order to sustain all 10 of these, let's just assume you're investing 10% of your resources to sustain each of these. So, if you have products and you have to contact a manufacturer to tell them, well, we want to reorder, you have to do that for all of them. If you want to list them on your website, you have to do that for all of them. So more or less, it all takes the same amount of energy to sustain, except these two things are producing you way more results. This is the same thing in ministry. Two members are going to bring in 80% of the income. 2 of 10 members is going to bring in 80% of new people and share the gospel. 80%, 80% of the gospel presentations will come from 2 out of 10. That is very significant, and you need to know that, because if you can identify the people in your congregation who are most committed and they're producing the most fruit in your ministry, who are they? What are they thinking? Why are they doing this? How do we make more people like you, firstly? But secondly, let's look at this. The things, obviously, we're not going to say, hey, you're not producing fruit in the ministry, get out. Oh, yeah, you're only buying a little. We're not going to sell to you anymore. That's fairly extreme. There can be situations when that is the case. Now, in scripture, it's like, well, if someone is, sinning and you go to them alone, and then you go to them in two, and then you take them before the ministry and you address these things, what does it say? Prune them, treat them as though they are an unbeliever. And now that just means, what are we doing? We're not going to be engaging with them in the same way and putting the resources into them in the same way, because it's very clear they don't want to do this thing called Christianity in the way that it is, the whole congregation is saying it should be done. Well, in business, it's the same. It's easy if you just sell a product to someone, over a website, and then you ship it out and you're done. You don't really need to prune clients. Well, it's kind of, when you have service clients and you have some clients, 80% or 20% of the clients here at ClickMill produce 80% of our income. The other 20% of clients produce 20% of the income. And they all take roughly, well, this is actually not true. They don't even take the same amount of resources. As it turns out, the best paying clients often have the least problems. The lowest paying clients often have the most problems. So this can happen sort of on multiple dimensions. And so I want you to follow me here. And so this is an example from my business in the past is we got in a couple really good clients, and then we had some clients who are just paying a little bit from when we started, but they don't understand the value of the services. So they're calling at all hours of the night. We had this one lady, and she was very kind and very well intentioned, and also very anxious and did not have boundaries. And she's calling my cell phone in the middle of the night at 4 in the morning, early in the morning, in the evening with my family. And it's like, I've told her multiple times, listen, this is not inside work hours. And she's super anxious because, the world is falling in, and that is coming on to me. So in that case, 20% of the clients are producing 80% of my stress. And she also happened to be one of the lowest paying clients. And so what you can do is you can go and say, all right, well, let's see here. This right here is what we need to be sustainable. We can lose all of this and be okay. And what you can then do is go in and say, okay, guys, here, okay, all 10 clients, here's how we're going to do things. We love you guys. You're awesome clients. And also, just so we can serve you and everybody better, we need to have these rules. If you contact us in these times and through these mediums, the box on the website or whatever, like not direct phone calls, whatever it is, these are the new rules. If you're able to operate that and pay your bill on time, that these types of things like basic rules, these are boundaries, then we absolutely want to keep moving forward and helping you grow and all this stuff. However, at the same time, if we're not able to respect these sort of basic boundaries, and again, this isn't necessarily how I'd say it in an email, but these are now requirements. And if these can't be met, then we're going to have to, in some kind way, part ways so that we can really focus the energy where it needs to be and make everybody's ministries better. Okay, well, are you talking about firing clients? Yes. But what happens is most people just go, oh, okay, I can do that. And then they quit calling and bothering during outside of business hours, and they respect the boundaries and they pay their bill on time. All right. Well, that's great. So could you lose all of these and still be getting 80% of your increase? Yes. And that's fine. Sometimes you need to do that. It just depends on what it is. But usually, like in the case of clients, they'll just be like, oh, okay, hey, no problem. Sorry, I didn't even know because you didn't communicate it. And then two of them are like, no, I need access to you all the time. And it's like, well, hey, we really love you. At the same time, we're not going to be able to do that. So, our contract expired, 6 months ago, a couple of years ago. We're still together. So we're going to need to draw up a new contract. We're going to put the stuff in there. And, we're going to send that over to you in 2 weeks. And if we can't agree to those terms, then we'll probably, we'll just give you warning now that we'll probably need to be moving on, something like that. And then what happens? 80% of your stress and problems disappear because 20% of these clients are the problem client. 20% of your church parishioner, your church congregants are the problem congregants that create you most of your stress. Well, you can resolve these issues and get 80% of your resources back by solving a very small minority of issues and not affecting your growth. Now, here's what happens. Okay, so when we're talking about pruning, this is the greatest thing ever because you're stressed. You're doing so many things. You're managing 10 services or 10 programs or 10 products and services. Only two of them bring in 80% of your results. Well, what happens when you just delete this? All of the attention, effort, energy, all of these things that you used to have to put into those 8 is now gone. This happens when you prune a plant. And I have a garden with my kids because I want to understand how this works. Jesus is always talking about farming and plants for growth for some reason. Well, we garden and we do plants. Well, what happens is it's really hard. You're probably looking at me right now. You're like, wait a minute, you're telling me to cut all that stuff? Are you crazy? That's 80% of the bit. Yes. Because if 80% of your plant is sick and you don't prune that off, it's going to merge into the good stuff and then the whole thing's going to die. What do? You cut it. And then the roots and all the energy and resources coming up from the roots don't go down the sick vines. They only go to the vines that are producing what? The 80%. So you have all of these resources that were producing 20%. You cut it, and all of those resources flow over to the two things that were producing 80%. And so now this 20% resources flows over and produces an exponential increase in fruit because this is wasted. Why would you put it here if you could put it here? And imagine I wish I knew how to do this math off the top of my head. If 20% gets you 80% of your resources, and let's say that's 10. Let's say you get 10 increase in whatever it is, money or people coming to your church or whatever it is. Well, what does 80 get you? 20 gets you 10, 80 gets you 10, 30. So when you reallocate these resources over here, you don't have 10 increase, you have 40. That's huge. That is uh, a crazy growth track, right? And so when I tell ministry leaders, if this is not clear, please let me know in the comments. This is a little hard to explain because of the numbers moving around. But when I tell ministry leaders, life is not linear. More effort does not equal more results. They don't know what I mean. And what I'm saying is you should be able to do less stuff and have less stress and get more results. Well, how? Prune the 20% of the stuff, prune the 80, see, I'm even mixing up the numbers. Prune the 80% of the ministries that are producing 20% of your results. Get rid of them. Craig Groeschel in the book It, I reference it pretty often. He's a Christian believer. I think it's Life Church. I can't remember. He only had 4 ministries and he didn't even have any Bible studies. What do you mean? He only kept the 20% of ministries that produced the huge asymmetric fruit. Okay, do that in your ministry. Then what happens? You have less things to manage, and you're only managing the few things that get huge outsized return. That's how it's supposed to be. This is why McDonald's only has 8 things on the menu. I'm in Hawaii. You may not know this. I'm in Hawaii, and they have things called like haupia pie and taro pie. They have these interesting Hawaiian dishes out here on the menu in place of other things that would be elsewhere. They have cultural dishes. Why? Because in this place, those things sell best, and they don't sell those anywhere else because they don't make money anywhere else. So they have 8 things. They don't have 100 burgers. They don't have 1,000 options. They don't have customized. It's like, dude, do you want the hamburger or don't you want the hamburger? We make cheap hamburgers. Here are your options. That's it. And they've tested so many things and they say, these are our best sellers. The menu is the best sellers. And, they make money hand over fist. And this is the same with anything. Bring it down to a super tight group of things, products, services, ministry programs, in the case of ClickMill here, marketing services and programs for training. It's like 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8, something small that you can manage and you can split your resources between, but only the things that produce the largest asymmetric outcome. Anything that doesn't get that large asymmetric outcome gets pruned, especially if it has a negative asymmetric outcome. You're putting in 1 and you're getting like negative 100. All that stuff gets cut. Take all those resources and put it into the most fruitful things, and you're going to see an exponential growth. You're just going to take off like a rocket ship because you're just putting your resources in the right place. I hope this was helpful. Again, if you have questions, please let me know in the comments. If there's anything you'd like for clarity, this one's always a little difficult to teach, but if you'd like any additional something for clarity, please let me know. And I will look forward to seeing you in the very next video. God bless.